prior to the injury, I was someone that was still talking about the fact that my identity was in Christ. And then it was very challenged when I felt like almost every part of my identity outside of Christ, softball, being a student, I was just a go getter, workaholic, doing everything all the time. And all of that was taken away at once. And even though I had been saying my identity is in Christ, I felt like, who am I?
Welcome to the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Bryant. In every episode, we bring in guests who will inspire, encourage you to be more effective in your mission field. On today's episode of the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast, I have with me Kelsey O'Connor. How you doing, Kelsey?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for taking some time to be with us. We have pastors and church leaders who listen to this, and they're trying to help their people become more of who God created them to be. And you have such an inspiring story that I think could be really helpful to us. Would you just share a little bit about what happened? I think it was your junior year in college. You're a softball player, Division I at North Carolina State.
Yes, go Pack.
Yes, Wolfpack. So tell us what happened your junior year.
Yeah, so my junior year, I was at practice. It was the fall of my junior year. I was gearing up for the season. Junior year season was like a really exciting time. And when I was running bases, I collided with our shortstop. So as I was running to second base, she was coming through to turn a double play, but instead of making a lane on either side of the base path, she came straight through. And so I was hit by her knee right in the face as I was sliding into second base. And pretty instantly, I had this head injury that was also a head and neck and jaw injury. And for some context, I had had multiple head injuries and concussions prior to college. And so this particular injury and collision really just flipped my life upside down. So I have this injury. And then immediately after, I think I knew right away that this was the end of my softball career instantly. But right away, I was dizzy and nauseous and was in so much pain. And then during my junior year, over the next 6 weeks, I would say it was like this abrupt and gradual ending all at the same time. And so I struggled with this pain. And having been through this before, I think I knew this one was different. So I started seeing all these different doctors. We were talking about jaw surgery, my jaw. They said I had a fractured and dislocated jaw. I was having neck problems. I was in pain. I was struggling with school. And then all of a sudden, softball was over. And then I was potentially going to be maybe failing out of school. And so kind of all at once, this was happening, and ended up medically retiring from softball about 6 weeks later. And about 2 weeks after that, I was in a car accident and was okay relatively, but unfortunately suffered really bad whiplash. And so that became like a second component of this head injury that just completely prolonged my recovery and left me with all kinds of symptoms, both physical and pain, but also cognitive, and struggling to speak clearly, struggling with personality changes, and truly just becoming like a shell of who I once was. So in short summary, that is what happened to me over a very short time span of about 8 weeks. My junior year was this collision injury in softball, and really grappling with this life change in school and softball, and handling some dynamics on top of that. Some people that were very supportive, others that it was an invisible injury. They couldn't see it. They couldn't understand. Then I was in this car accident, and kind of at 20 years old, everything was just really turning upside down, and it was a difficult time.
It sounds very difficult. And I would love to hear kind of what happened next. Obviously, you're a person of faith. Talk about how your relationship with God helped you through this next season, and what happened next.
Yeah, absolutely. So my relationship with God, wow, I love talking about this part because prior to the injury, I was someone that was still talking about the fact that my identity was in Christ and it wasn't in softball and all of these other things. And then it was very challenged when I felt like almost every part of my identity outside of Christ, softball, being a student, I was just a go-getter, workaholic, doing everything all the time. And all of that was taken away at once. And even though I had been saying my identity is in Christ, I felt like, who am I? Like, who truly am I without these things and everything I spend my time on and the people around me? And how do I actually truly believe that? And it was just some particular moments where it was just me and God. And especially when you're recovering from a head injury, you can't be on your phone. I couldn't read very well. I was struggling with double vision. And there's a lot of time where you just sit in true silence and you just have to let time pass in order to recover. And it was in those moments that I just genuinely felt like connected and close to God, in the sense that I don't have to do anything to be loved. I just have to be, and I just felt his grace so strongly. And it was from that that I really started to reflect on, how am I going to move forward with this life change? And I was really struggling with how to see myself when I didn't have these accomplishments and achievements anymore. And so in that prayer and reflection, I decided, okay, how am I going to start speaking about other people differently? And that really turned into trying to describe people by their attitude and how they treat others and what makes them unique. And that to me is really connected to faith as well. Like, I think we're called to have a good attitude and gratitude. I think that we're called to treat other people well and with kindness and love our neighbor. And God creates us for a unique purpose. And so all of those things really came from my faith that were intertwined with it. And I tried to practice that in tangible form. And so that eventually led to just this mindset change, as well as this lightness and this joy that I was able to find after softball. I ended up recovering by the grace of God after about 10 months really well. I had this amazing senior year in college. I had a lot of support around me. And then during the spring of my senior year, it had been about a year and a half, and I decided to apply to speak at our big commencement ceremony at NC State. And I was chosen, and I had never spoken in public before. And I don't know what came over me or what made me decide to apply on a whim, having not done this before. But I ended up giving this commencement speech at NC State, and it ended up going viral on the internet after I posted it a month later. And truly, just my relationship with God throughout that time was just so grounded. And I felt like, regardless of what I do from this point on, I feel like I just want to focus on who I am and who He's calling me to be as a human being. And I wasn't winning on the field anymore, but I ended up giving this amazing speech and going viral on the internet. But even with all of that, I started getting messages, I mean, from all over the world, 27 countries, Jamaica, South Africa, I mean, Italy, all of these different places and these people with different stories. And I was just so touched by how different all of our stories were, but how connected some of our feelings and emotions were, and just that we're truly not that different. And how much it touched people to even start describing themselves differently to me in my inbox and saying, I've been a teacher for 25 years, but I know that I'm compassionate and I care about the world and I care about children, and I have a big heart. And so these people that were starting to kind of take that message for themselves, and I just felt so grounded. It was like everything in my life changed after going viral, and nothing changed at all at the same time, because when I had found just really God's love and God's peace in a completely different way than I had known it before after this injury and throughout this recovery, that's just stuck with me for the last several years, and just this overwhelming peace that I have. So if that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, I loved watching the speech, and it was cool to hear you say, I'm not sure what I'm doing next. And really what happened next is now you've been traveling and sharing the story. You have a podcast, Life Beyond Labels. And really that was the message in the speech. It was also cool to discover you have a twin brother who I guess sang the year before
I
at
do,
the
yes.
commencement. Yeah.
Yes, he actually he was asked to sing like the national anthem and his alma mater at his commencement ceremony the year before, and he is a performer. He was always in the musicals and on stage, and I tell him he inspired me a bit to feel like I could do it and to apply. I love him and so proud of him. So he and I have kind of swapped. I'm on stage now and he's working in sports, and it's pretty cool. But yeah,
Is
he
very
inspired me
cool.
to get up there and do it for sure.
Well, I love how that speech really hit a nerve. People, I think, were inspired certainly by your journey and healing, but also just reframing how we should see each other. Talk about how you've been able to look at people differently and see them differently and call that out in them. I think this is the part for those of us who are pastors, helping our people see themselves as more than a husband or someone who works as an engineer or a parent. There's certainly things, like you said earlier, that we can accidentally, perhaps unintentionally, see ourselves as more important than our identity in Christ. So talk about, like, what is it like to call that out of others, and how do people respond in those ways? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah,
What was the
absolutely.
last thing you heard?
Just how you were in the middle of your question of asking how we can describe people and what that looks like.
Good. Let me just try that question over, see if we'll not be interrupted. All right. So talk about a little bit, what is it like to call out in others who they are, not allowing people to get just trapped by the labels the world puts on themselves, or even the good things that God has given us that can become like our gods, if we're not careful. How have you seen seeing people differently help them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it really did come from wanting to be able to have something to apply to my life and take action towards. And so when I came up, I actually wrote it down as a resolution first on my phone, which was describe people not by their achievements, but by their attributes, by their attitude, how they treat others, and their unique characteristics. And it was a challenge for me to say, okay, when somebody's not in the room, how am I going to talk about them? Am I going to describe them, first of all, well and positively? Am I somebody who talks about people well when they're not in a room? And even how can I be better about telling the people that I love in my life how I see them? And so instead of starting to describe people, even that I love in my life, by their job titles or their relationship titles or these other things, I wanted to try to even work on my vocabulary of how can I describe, for example, my mother, who is just the most pure, kind, compassionate, selfless human being. And then I can tell you that she is an executive coach. She's very accomplished. I mean, I look up to her success, but describing her energy and her heart and doing that for all of the people in my life and really giving others an image of who they are. It's honest, it truly has opened up the way that I think others around me are describing people in their life. That's just what I've been told, is the fact that even my friends that have spent a lot of time doing this with me say that it's changed their life in the sense of how they see the people in their life and how they're able to actively describe them and talk about them. And I think calling out who people are, it does strike a nerve, as you mentioned earlier, in the sense that we all want to feel seen. And I think, when it comes to my relationship with God, I feel completely known and seen. And we also have this craving for the people in our life to see us as well, right? We can have this close relationship with God, but we also want to be seen in our communities by our friends, by our family. And so when we see beyond those achievements and accolades, and it's not that those aren't important, they're extremely important and we should be proud of them and we should celebrate them for others in our life, but truly taking the time to call out, I see how selfless you are. I see how motivated you are and hardworking, and what's underneath some of those achievements and jobs and roles. And it just allows for genuine connection. And I think it's expanded just the way that I think about and see people on a default now. And I look for their heart and I try to prioritize that. And I've been told that it's changed even just family dynamics and friends. I just got an email. I have a teacher that messages me every semester. She's from the Netherlands. And every semester she emails me about how her students that are 13 to 14, they watch the speech and they write down reflections about it and their own identity. And then she's gotten messages from parents that have sparked conversations at their dinner table and how it's kind of changed the way that they talk to each other. And I have never been more blown away or humbled and touched by the fact that being able to describe other people and see them for who they are is changing dinner conversations all the way over in the Netherlands. And so I think it's just something that we can all be working on as people, whether, you know, wherever you're at in your faith journey, like something that we can truly apply. Who is God calling us to be, and how can we shine that light and reflect it on other people?
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. KelseyO'Connor.com. You can find the website. You can watch the speech. You can bring her in to speak at your church. She's also a coach and consultant as well. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. Keep up your great work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for the Innovative Church Leaders Podcast. Go to my website, ericbryant.org, for my newsletter and free resources.